Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth session in our Mindfulness Monday series to be held this summer. These sessions are a collaboration between the Office of Alumni Engagement and the University Center for Student Wellbeing. During these sessions, meditations will be taught and practiced together, such as mindfulness of breathing, eating, and movement, in hopes of providing us with a greater sense of peace and vitality. This session will cover mindful movement. I'm Audrey Tierney, the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement, and I'm so pleased to be joined today by my colleagues and alumni, Dr. T.J. Smith and Amber Leisure of the Center for Student Wellbeing. They were more than happy to put together this program to help us all navigate through these challenging times with the present pandemic. Before I introduce them, I have just a few notes in regards to the technical end of the session. Throughout the program, your microphones will be muted, but you are welcome to submit questions through the chat feature found on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. TJ and Amber will answer questions throughout the program as time permits. You also may turn your video off if you prefer. Now, a few words about my colleagues from the Center for Student Wellbeing in case this is your first time joining us. Dr. TJ Smith is a licensed clinical psychologist and has been engaged with meditation for over a decade, most recently leading meditation groups for Duquesne University students. TJ is currently the training director for Duquesne's counseling services. Amber Leisure has a background in exercise physiology and has taught yoga for 13 years and meditation for 11. Amber currently is the assistant director for recreation services and has a profound appreciation for the ecumenical approach to the mission of the university. She also just graduated from Duquesne in May with her master's degree. Now I'll turn our session over to Amber and TJ.
Yay. Hi, everybody. So nice to see some familiar names on this list from my yoga class. Hey, Peggy. So I'm really happy to see you all here today. We have if you're new to this class, we have a list of different topics that we cover for each of these meditation series. So we talk about breathing, we talked about mindful eating, and today's session is going to be all about mindful movement. So it should be pretty exciting because a lot of times when we think about meditation, we think about it in terms of, sitting still, finding stillness. We always use that stillness as an anchor. But what if you have a hard time being still? Or what if you want to use meditation techniques or mindfulness techniques while you're doing something else, like walking or even lifting weights or doing a yoga class? So we're addressing that today. And I think, Audrey, thank you so much for those great introductions. And I'm excited to get started. I'm going to turn it over to TJ.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome if this is your first time joining us. Mindful movement. So the place to start today will be mindfulness. This will be a nice way of sort of starting, starting again where we started when we began with at the beginning of this summer semester of different mindfulness course. Each of the different courses, we looked at one aspect of mindfulness. When we started way back in, would that have been May, June, July, August, May, we talked about mindfulness in general. Then we moved a little bit talking about mindfulness of eating. Last time we met, it was mindfulness of breathing, and now it's mindfulness of movement. So each of these ways gives us a little chunk of what it means to be mindful and a different experience of mindfulness. So I'll look back to think about what we meant by mindfulness, so that'll serve as really a ground and an anchor for when we talk about mindfulness of movement. So we'll go back to a definition by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and not judgmentally. So looking at the different aspects of this definition, we can see that we can use that to apply to our experience, whether that be the experience of eating, whether it be experience of breathing, and here today we're going to be talking about the experience of movement. And I do think it's wonderful to talk about movement because really when we think about mindfulness or meditation in general, you do get the sense of the person who's on the top of a grand mountain, sitting still, overlooking a serene setting, and really is just immovable. So that's one sort of take on mindfulness or meditation. But really, that's only really a little part of our day. I think for the most part, we are in motion. We are moving to get from here to there. So I think we lose a lot of opportunities to be mindful if we're only focusing on being mindful for that, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day that we're sitting on our chair, sitting on a cushion, being mindful. So we'll use this definition of mindfulness to apply it to the mindfulness of movement as we learn more about that today. So mindfulness is an awareness that arises from paying attention. So that really denotes that this is a process of concentration, that we're focusing on a certain aspect of our experience. We'll be focusing on movement, exactly what that means today. However, when you're focusing on movement, different thoughts are going to arise, different emotions, sensations, especially the sensation part. We're really privileging the body today with movement, the sensation of stretch, the sensation of comfort, the sensation of really finding a balance between doing what you can do, not overstepping your limits, but also just letting your body do what it can do. So we'll really be focusing on the body, and more than just the body in motion. But when we're doing that too, thoughts will rise and emotions will rise. Second part of it is on purpose. We call it setting the attention for attention. So what happens is, for the most part, when we're moving about and moving from this to that, I know Amber and I were even talking about this morning, we have the fall semester upon us in a couple weeks. So we're moving and grooving, trying to get a lot of stuff prepared. So when we're doing that, the mind tends to sort of always go into front mode, future focus, future centered. So we really don't get to sort of pay attention to what's going on in the here and now. So today I say we'll set that intention for attention and really try to focus on what it means to be a body, what it means to be a body in motion, what it means to do movement, and that'll be the intention for today. Other part of it is mindful in the present moment. I already just mentioned that. It's a here and now mindfulness. The intention is to really be grounded in what's going on now in our body, in our mind, and in our emotions as it arises right now. And that's the biggest thing too, when you'll be focusing on the body in motion through mindful yoga. You're really going to want to pay attention to how you experience it. Your mind might go into thinking about what you have after this or what you have going on, what went on before this. But we really encourage you just to sort of catch that and bring it back to the body in the here and now. And the last thing is non-judgmentally. And that is, we mentioned that last, but I almost think of that as almost foundational from the spot that I come from too, because it really is, you're doing this from a space of neutrality, a space of sort of really welcoming, observing, letting what is be, any thoughts, emotions, sensations that are arising when you're doing this mindfulness of movement. You let that be, because I really think for a lot of us, the judgmental, the critical, that part of yourself can get into play where, oh, I'm not doing this right, especially in something where we're doing like yoga or movement. We can be really judgmental, like, oh, this stretch, I can't do this stretch right. Look, I'm looking at myself on the screen. Oh my God, that looks horrible. So that can really set us for a tizzy. So this is really the experience of just being non-judgmental, letting it be what it is. And then if you find yourself being non-judgmental, being not judgmental about that, just sort of catch sight of that. Okay, yeah, I am being a little bit critical here. I'm being a little bit judgmental. So really when we kind of notice that and bracket it to a certain extent, then we can be more fully present and fully in our bodies and movement.
I'm really glad, TJ, that you highlighted the non-judgment aspect of today's class specifically, because I think that exercise, especially when it's group exercise, I'm in a studio right now, and usually there are tons of people in here exercising, and judgment happens all the time, whether you're looking around at other people, whether you're looking at yourself, and we're making these like small judgments as we go through those things. And the beauty of doing these online classes for this whole quarantine period has been, what I've noticed is, we're kind of in our own space. So there's not really as many other people to like compare to, judge yourself against. But those comparisons are always, they can be very damaging, because, especially in the case of yoga, because we're bound by our physiology. So some people have shorter arms than other people. So you might not be able to reach your toes, and it's not because you're not flexible or you're not doing it correctly. Your arms are just shorter, or maybe your legs are just shorter, or maybe we have different tightnesses. And when I talk about the asana or the poses in yoga, which we'll get into later, one specific pose might look 100 different ways on 100 different bodies. But we get into these judgment spaces, and so using these techniques for mindfulness and non-judgment and presence can really help us to put it into perspective so that we can really get a true benefit from what we're doing, as opposed to spending a lot of our time in those judgment spaces. So thank you for highlighting that, TJ. So we're gonna do a yoga class today from our chair. But before we do, I'd like to discuss the science of movement. So my background is in exercise physiology, and from a physical standpoint, we know at least one benefit that exercise gives our bodies to benefit our health. But from a mindfulness and meditative standpoint, there are a lot of positives that come from that as well. So when we do any type of movement, whether that's walking, whether that's biking, swimming, yoga, any of those things, we have a positive heart rate, blood pressure, and cardiovascular respiratory response. So as we get into a routine of, let's say we do walking meditation daily, which we'll teach you how today, as we get into those routines, one thing that we might notice is while we're exercising, our heart rate increases. Even if you're doing yoga, sometimes your heart rate will increase if it's a more difficult pose, which increases the blood flow to the muscles. If we're breathing, that's a respiratory response. If we're breathing, we're getting more oxygen to those muscles, getting more oxygen to the brain. But over time, that can have a positive benefit for our blood pressure as well. So there are a lot of benefits from a health perspective to exercise on a regular basis. But when we make it more mindful, when we're present for that, when we're non-judgmental, when we are paying attention to what we're doing and how we're doing it, we also have benefits for our working memory. So a lot of people talk about, during quarantine, pandemic, our minds are kind of all over the place, scrambled, weird dreams, weird sleep schedules, different things like that. But when we can take time to be mindful in our movement and to actually move ourselves a little bit every day, there have been studies that have shown that our working memory has actually been able to be enhanced from doing such things. And one of the most poignant studies that I liked was a professor, and I don't remember, I think it was at Cornell, performed this study where he made his students go for a 20-minute mindful walk without your phone, and just paying attention to your surroundings, paying attention to the air, paying attention to what it feels like to be walking. And then they did a test afterwards. And the control group and the variable group, the results showed that the students who did non-distracted movement actually had better working memory than the students who didn't. So if you want to think about mindfulness and movement together in terms of our health benefits, there are quite a few, and they're not all physical. So when we perform movement-based mindfulness, we want to keep a few things in mind. Maybe walking is hard for you. Maybe there is an injury, or you don't like it, or you don't live somewhere that you can safely go walking and you don't want to pace around your room. Those are all fine reasons not to. But if you want to find some sort of movement-based mindfulness exercise, maybe swimming is the right thing for you, or paddling on a kayak, or pedaling a bike. As long as it's rhythmic, that's really what we're looking for, something that you do over and over again. Just like our breath is rhythmic, we're inhaling, exhaling, we do it all the time. So we want it to be some type of rhythmic motion that we could do anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a specific location or in one of those nicely curated and manicured labyrinth spaces that you see at some monasteries. It could really be anywhere. It could be on the sidewalk in downtown Pittsburgh, so it doesn't have to be anywhere specific. And it could either be physically focused or mentally focused. So the physical focus, whenever you're doing your movement-based mindfulness, would be focusing on what your body's doing, focusing on, what does the air feel like? What's the temperature? What does the sun feel like on my skin? What do my feet feel like? or it could be mantra or prayer focused, where as you're walking, you're repeating the same prayer or mantra over and over again and really focusing on that and using your steps to kind of move you forward through those recitations. And then you also want to take into account the idea of flow. And flow is this space, this mind space that we can get into where you may have found yourself there doing any variety of activity where you just are in the moment, you're fully absorbed, time, you have no sense of time is moving, it's not moving quickly, it's not moving slowly, it's not even there to you, you know, you're in that headspace. And to receive this sense of flow, you need three different things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And autonomy is basically the freedom to go anywhere or do whatever activity you wish. Mastery, in the sense of movement-based mindfulness, is the ability to perform this exercise or movement without really thinking about it. That's why we like to use walking or breathing, because we don't have to think through every step. We're used to walking. We don't have to think through every breath. Okay, now I have to inhale, now I have to exhale. We've already mastered that movement, so we don't really have to think about the ins and outs of it. And then finally, to attain a sense of flow, you need to have a sense of purpose about what you're doing. So when we move mindfully, our purpose, and it might be different for each person, but the purpose is to maybe attain a sense of stillness, attain a sense of calm or clarity, or maybe it's more broad and your purpose is for self-care or to manage your stresses and anxiety. So when you put those three things together, you can place yourself in that state of flow with your movement-based mindfulness, whether you're in a yoga class, walking, pedaling a bike, or kayaking. Just make sure you're in a safe space to do that. You know, you're not sitting somewhere that there's a lot of traffic or anything like that. And finally, when we talk about movement-based mindfulness, it's really important that we are void of distraction. And you can't control external distraction, like if you're trying to be mindful on a bus or walking down a sidewalk, you can't control who passes by you or how many cars pass by. But what you can control is, are you listening to music to distract yourself, or a podcast? Are you looking at your phone and reading your emails, or reading a text message, or thinking about the text message you want to send to somebody? You know, those types of distractions take us away from the present moment, take us away from our focus on what we're doing, and take the mindfulness aspect out of it. So it's important that we make sure that we're void of distraction. And if you're in a yoga class, sometimes poses are really uncomfortable, so we try to focus on, you know, the music, or focus on anything else. Like, just keep holding this pose. I'm going to focus on this point on the floor. Oh my gosh, I need to clean my carpet right there. You know, those types of things. You really want to be completely present, fully physical, paying attention to what's going on in the body. So as I walk you through these next exercises, we're going to be doing our yoga from a chair today. I want you to pay attention to what's going on in your body. Really try to be present and void of distraction. So even if something's uncomfortable, really focus on where it is uncomfortable. Focus on, you know, breathing into it and paying attention to that, because not only does it help you maintain a sense of presence, but it also might point to some sort of underlying injury that you might not realize that you have. So it could be a really positive thing to do for your health as well. So when we do our chair yoga poses, I hope you can take away some of these exercises for maybe days where you're stuck at your computer or you're seated all day. These might be some of, you might pull a few exercises that you can do maybe during the work day without feeling silly doing it. So I'm going to turn off my screen share right now so that you can see me more fully. I realize I'm just a little thumbnail up in the corner. So, and I'm going to move my chair back. So as I'm getting my space situated, what I want you to do is make sure that you are in a comfortable chair, that you have a solid base, and that you, if you have wheels on your chair, that you make sure that you're just aware that you have wheels, that you're on a moving surface. But if you have the opportunity to change chairs to something that's a little bit more stable, that would be a little bit better. So we're sitting in our chair, and we're just going to get comfortable in the chair. I want you to shift side to side, forward and back, and make sure that you're evenly balanced from your left side of your body to your right side of your body. And your feet are on the floor, not crossed ankles, not crossed legs. And just take a moment to focus on the breath. Focus on how you feel sitting in the chair. What does the chair feel like to you? Take into account the atmosphere of the space in the room. And just take a moment to take your to-do list, take your memories of what happened earlier today or earlier this weekend, and place them outside of this room for right now. They'll be there when you come back. And go ahead and close your eyes. And as you breathe, we're going to lift our shoulders as high as we can as we inhale. And as we exhale, we're going to press our shoulders down as low as we can. So we're just inhaling, lifting the shoulders. Exhaling, releasing the shoulders. And continue breathing as you move your shoulders. Paying attention if you feel any tightness on one side, if you feel any imbalances. And as you exhale, try to fully relax through your core, your abdomen. As you inhale, you're engaging your core, engaging your torso, lifting your rib cage up towards the ceiling as you lift your shoulders. And then you can open your eyes, and we're going to just make a few shoulder rounds backwards first, as big of a circle as you can, reaching as far forward, up, back, and down as you can, and just do a short, brief assessment of your shoulders. Does it feel the same on the right side and the left side? Do you feel any points where you feel a little bit stuck on one side, or maybe on both sides? And then change directions, noticing in your body, paying attention all the time to what this feels like in the shoulders, but also in the core. Notice how it changes when you go from backwards to forwards. And relax through the shoulders. We're going to inhale, reach our arms up, holding it up overhead, and we're going to tilt to the right as we exhale. Inhale, lift up, exhale, tilt to the left, and continue. Breathing and tilting. So we're using the rhythmic motions of our breath along with the rhythmic motions of this yoga flow to try to create a sense of flow, but also to engage your core, engage with your body so that you're paying attention to what's going on, being fully immersed in what's happening in the here and now. When you bring it up to center, I want you to exhale and bring the arms back down. From here, we're going to sit at the end of our chair, and I'm going to turn to the side so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm sitting at the end of my chair, up nice and tall, and I'm just going to extend my left leg out in front of my body. I'm going to place my hands on my thighs, and I'm going to lean forward. So I'm hinging forward from my hips so that I have a straight back right here. It's not a contest in how far I can reach. It's more moving from the hips so that I feel a little bit of an opening in the back of my left leg. I'm pointing my toe up to the ceiling. My other leg is supporting me. Keep extending forward. If you have a lot of flexibility in your lower core, in your legs, you might be able to lean a little bit farther forward. If you don't have that much flexibility, and I promise you I do not, then you might just be leaning forward a little bit. Like I said, every pose is going to feel a little bit differently, and it's going to look a little bit different for every person. So let's not get caught up in how it's supposed to look, and really just accept where you are right now. Bring it back up to a seated position, and now we're going to cross that same ankle over our thigh. We're going to place one hand on the knee, one hand on the ankle. Again, we're sitting up as tall as we can, and we're extending forward out over that leg. You're going to feel several different muscles opening now, namely in your hips, maybe a little bit in the lower back. And from here, relax the shoulders. Just focus on your breath, close your eyes, and take a moment to just be present. pay attention to what you're feeling right now. Be fully engaged in the moment, in what's happening in your body. Close your eyes as you inhale and exhale. And open your eyes again and release that foot down. And now we're going to extend the right leg out in front of our body, toes pointed to the ceiling, hands on the hips. It could be on both hips or just on that leg that's out. You pick. Sit up as tall as you can and extend forward. Feeling the opening in the back of the leg, really paying attention. This is half of a forward fold maneuver. And it's really made to open up through the lower back and the hamstrings and the backs of the legs. Try to push yourself out of your comfort zone so that you feel a light pull, but not to the point that you feel any type of pain or discomfort. And just rest in that space, paying full attention to where you feel opening. You might feel some other muscles tightening up. Find something to relax here. Take another inhale, another exhale, and then release from that pose. And we're going to pick the right ankle up, place it over the left thigh, hand on the knee, hand on the ankle. Sit up as tall as you can again, and extend forward. Noticing how the opening moved from the hamstrings to the hip area, maybe a little bit of the lower back. Close your eyes, just focus on the breath, using your inhale to bring awareness to your body and use your exhale to find something to relax, something to release, something to open. Being here right now, not thinking about our to-do list. If your mind starts to wander, just gently bring it right back to what you're doing, right back to the breath, right back to the body. Inhale and exhale. Open your eyes and then bring your feet back down so that the feet are facing forward again, sitting up nice and tall in our chair. We're going to sit back so that we're seated with our lower back supported. We're going to raise the right arm up over our head, and we're going to bring the hand down along the spine. Left arm's going to come up along behind, and see if you can't reach your fingers together. So if your fingers don't reach together, you could also grab on somewhere in your shirt. You could, if you have a towel handy or you're doing this later in the day, you could use a towel to hold on to for both hands. Let's see if it works. If your hands don't touch, so don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. Maybe one day they will. But we're just opening up through the shoulders, opening up through the triceps, holding it here, paying attention to the body, where you might feel tension, where you might feel pulling, where you might feel contracting. Inhale and exhale. And release gently. Gently bring it back. Give yourself a couple shoulder rolls. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So now we're raising the left arm up overhead, bringing it along down our spine so that our elbow is right over the shoulder. Then our right arm is going to reach around back. See if you can't touch your fingers on this side. Now this is where we really pay attention to our symmetry. Can you touch, the fingers maybe touch on one side and not the other? Or maybe one side was a lot easier than the other to get into that space. You know, we're trying to think about our imbalances here so that we can make sure that we have positive muscle balance so that we avoid injuries. So as you're holding this pose, pay attention to the body right now. Do you feel any tightness somewhere differently than you may have felt on the other side? Do you feel opening, contractions, pulling? Making sure that we're sitting up nice and tall, keeping our core engaged through the whole motion. Relaxing the face, relaxing the jaw. Take one more deep breath here. And then gently release. Give yourself a couple shoulder rolls. And relax. So we're going to move into some spinal twists next. So this is where it's really important, if you have wheels on your chair, to be mindful of that so that we're not pushing with our legs and you're not rolling all over the place. But what we're going to do is we're going to sit at the very end of our chair. We're going to turn to the side. So we're sitting at the end of our chair with our body turned 90 degrees to face, we'll face the right side first. And I want your left leg to be free of movement. So you can swing your leg around. There's no chair underneath it to support it. From this position, our right hand is on the back of our chair. We're going to step the left leg back. We're going to start out at a 90-degree angle for the back leg and the front leg. If that feels good and you feel safe, you can start extending that leg back as far as you wish. You can have a slight bend in the back knee. We're squeezing the glutes, arching our lower back, opening our chest to the front of the room. Now this is Ajna Asana or Anjane Asana, and we can reach up into Crescent Lunge, opening up through our hip flexor. If that doesn't feel safe, you can also keep one hand flat on the back of the chair, the other hand on your hip. So we're opening up through the hip flexor, the front of the hip. If you spend a lot of time in a chair, this is a great one to do to open up through the front of the hip. But we also want to make sure that we're doing it mindfully. So bring your mind to your body, pay attention to where you feel it, pay attention to your rhythmic breath and how your exhale may relax the muscle just a little bit more. From here, we're going to enter a spinal twist. So we're sweeping our left arm around to the back of the chair. Right arm is going to go to the left side of the chair, and we're going to open our elbows nice and wide. So we're using our leverage with our hands against the chair to enhance our spinal twist. As we look behind us, keep pushing, but we're still dropping that left hip down to the floor, breathing and relaxing. Pay attention to everything that's happening in your body right now. Your spine, your right leg, your left leg, your neck, your shoulders, your upper back. Notice how it changes as you inhale and exhale. And then from here, we're gently going to pull out of this twist by rotating our torso, bringing the legs in and sitting up nice and tall in our chair with our knees open. So our hips are back in our chair. Our knees are open so that the middle of our chair is exposed. We're going to inhale, reach up. And we're going to exhale, extend forward. You can place your hands on your ankles or the floor in front of you. And from here, I just want you to open up through the lower back. Let your head hang down. Relax between the shoulder blades. Relax the facial muscles. Inhaling and exhaling. Give your spine a chance to reset, realign, and relax. Pay attention to what's happening in your body, where you might feel an opening, where you might feel a contraction. Do you feel any tension anywhere? And then from here, we're bringing our hands to our thighs, and we're going to back roll up one vertebrae at a time, rolling the shoulders back. And now we're going to rotate so that we're facing the left side of our room. And we're going to slide out to the end of our chair so that our right leg has full freedom to go wherever it wants. Starting out at a 90-degree angle behind you. And then from there, if you feel safe, you can extend that leg out. I extend out to the side slightly just to give myself a little bit more balance so that my chair doesn't tip over. This isn't the best chair. So you can have your leg out towards the camera, or you can bring it into more of a straight line. It's really up to you. Like I said, all poses are going to look different for different people. As long as we're in a safe alignment, as long as you don't feel pain, then you're good to go. From here, we're dropping the right hip down to the floor, inhaling, reaching our arms up. You can also keep one hand on the chair if that feels safer. We have a slight back bend in our lower back, extending back through that leg, dropping the right hip down. Let's look up at the ceiling, drop the shoulders away from the ears. Hold it here in Anjane Asana. Keep breathing. This is also called Crescent Lunge. Inhale and exhale. Dropping the right hip, noticing how the left hip might feel a little bit more tight in this position. One more inhale, and on your exhale, we're going to rotate in our chair, holding the sides of the back of the chair. Open our elbows wide, look behind you. Keep twisting, keep breathing. Take note, do you feel any tension anywhere? Do you feel discomfort or pain? Really be present. We don't want to feel pain, so if you feel pain somewhere, you can always ease up. You can bend that back leg or do what you need to do to release some tension that might be building. Keep twisting in the chair. Pay attention to your body, to what's going on as you breathe. And on your next breath, bring it forward. You can release from that pose. Sitting nice and tall in the back of the chair, knees open, inhaling up and exhaling down to the floor or your ankles. I don't want to touch the floor, so I'm holding on to my ankles, but you can also touch the floor. But from here, close your eyes and focus on your breath, your inhale and your exhale, opening up through the lower back. Relaxing through the face and the back of the neck. Take one more mindful breath here, paying attention as you inhale, the changes that your body makes to accommodate an inhale. And then as you exhale fully, take into account what muscles you might feel relaxing as you exhale. And then we'll bring our hands to our thighs. We're going to back roll all the way up, one vertebrae at a time, ending with our head, roll the shoulders back, up and down. Let's exhale, sink forward until we're at a flat back, and then we're going to inhale here, holding it in place, flat back. Exhale here, try to relax through the lower back. And on the next inhale, back roll up again, one vertebrae at a time. Roll the shoulders back. And hopefully you feel a little bit more opened up in your core, in your legs, especially in your hips. A lot of these exercises were to negate some of the effects of sitting. We've been walking less. Well, I'll speak for myself. I've been walking less. I've been sitting more since March. And so some of these exercises are really good just to negate the negative effects for the spine and hips from being in a seated position more often. But also they can serve as a reminder to be mindful. And you can take a simplistic motion, just like having your ankle over your thigh, and use that as a way to be mindful about what's happening in your body right now and being present. So I hope you found something that you enjoyed. And I'm going to go back to our presentation.
That was wonderful, Amber. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. There's something about that too. I mean, every time you help us with yoga, you walk us through that. It brings a sort of different sort of relaxation, and it's almost like the act of movement, the act of helps you to settle into the body. And afterwards, I feel like a unique combination of just sort of relief and presence that sometimes I don't get as easily if I'm just doing maybe a sitting meditation.
I think just to add on to that, thank you for that observation, TJ. Yoga is really, it came from India. It's over 7,000 years old, and we use the sutras by Patanjali, or there are like a lot of different people who have contributed to the practice of yoga and brought it to the West. But at its baseline, the practice of yoga, or the asanas, at least, we did asana today, those were the stretches. That is just to settle the body to get into a space for seated meditation, because sometimes we feel agitated, sometimes we feel, all over the map. And using yoga or using the asana practice is really just to calm the body, and it has nothing to do with the actual poses. I threw out like maybe some Sanskrit names for some of the poses or some English names for some of them. But a lot of those have been invented in the past 50 years. It's not like this ancient, like you could only do this pose like this, it's just something that was invented, and it works because we're looking for focal ways to open up through the muscles, through the joints, but also ways to just bring the mental focus to what's going on in the body to calm it.
Yeah. That's a nice, nice transition too, to have the asanas, the poses, and then another sort of mindful movement would be walking. And Unfortunately, walking meditation is really difficult via Zoom platform, just to sort of negotiate with the camera and whatnot. So I think this will give us a chance to talk about walking meditation, what that would look like. And then that's something that we would give you a chance to practice that outside of this session too. And then you could, of course, follow up with us next time we meet. Or even give us an email if you want to. So I'll talk a bit about walking meditation. Basically, walking meditation is a way to bring that mindful presence into the body in the here and now. So when we're walking, we really are trying to stay grounded in our body. And the nice thing about that is it really provides an opportunity to stay grounded in our body that might not be afforded to us if, like we're saying, we're doing a seated meditation on the couch or on a mat. I think walking has a unique opportunity to let us come back to ourselves. You've heard this phrase, feet firmly on the ground. I think that's a nice way to think about this. This walking is a way to ground ourselves, to ground our mind firmly in our body, and to have our feet on the ground as we move through the earth. More of a practical note would be, when do you mindfully walk? Question is whenever you want to. Really, the answer is, when you have time. But the two ways that I think about it would be, something more intentionally or deliberate. You might want to practice walking meditation, even after our meeting today, maybe, tonight or something, maybe the next week. And that would just be intentionally set aside some time. That could be 10, 15 minutes. It's done nicely outside. I think it's a beautiful day for it. Actually, the sun's shining. I'm going to do some walking meditation after this. You could do it outside. It could be done inside the house too, depending on what sort of space you have. They usually find that maybe about 7 to 10 paces is okay if you're going to be doing walking meditation inside of a home. So if you have that 7 to 10 paces, that might be a place to do it. Getting outside is good. I think it's nice actually, sort of be walking in the open air. But if there is something that prohibits that, then I think inside the house is also okay. So that would be more the intentional walking, the setting up some time to practice. I like, and I really sort of value just the everyday mindful walking. That could be something where you're not necessarily practicing it, but you just find yourself having some time, let's say walking from your car to the office, walking from this building to that building. So I think that's really the best time to practice too, once you do some intentional moments. It's just finding times in your day that you are already walking and you pause and you say, yeah, I want to practice some mindful walking meditation here. I noticed for myself, I walk from the Locust Street Garage up there by the Gunberg Library down to Fisher Hall, when I'm walking to office. And that provides for a wonderful opportunity really to be mindful. I know for the most part that day, if I'm thinking about what's heading, what's ahead of me for the day, I might be thinking. So it's a real blessing that in those moments I'm able to catch sight of it, getting out of the car, pause, set the intention for mindful walking, and really being present in myself, in the body, walking to the office. And it sort of sets the tone for the day. Walking meditation, you always have to think of pace too. If this is something you're setting aside, doing it intentionally, let's say today or after today's meeting, you're going to want to go a slower pace than you would naturally. It's not going to be a fast pace where you're doing some power walking. It's going to be a slower pace. Just like when we did mindful eating, you could slow down the pace to really a really slow pace. Honestly, sometimes outside that might be a bit awkward if you're looking like you're walking in slow motion, but you can really slow it down to a pace where you feel comfortable. That's the thing. We want to slow it down to a pace where you feel comfortable and you can really be mindful of what's going on. Mindfulness of body really isn't, sort of rocket science to a certain extent. It really is what it sounds. It's being mindful of yourself as a body as you're walking in the world. The real basic principle of that would be paying attention and bringing awareness to your feet and bringing awareness to your legs. So when you're walking, you really want to feel your feet planted firmly on the ground. And then when you take the step, you're really going to want to pay attention to the transfer of weight that happens within your legs. So you're moving one step at a time, left foot forward, you're feeling that weight hitting the feet, going up through your legs. And then as you go to transfer to your right foot, you again feel the transfer the weight to your right leg, and then your feet stand firmly on the ground there. So it really is bringing awareness to the muscles, the movement in the body that is involved in walking. And in a way, it's amazing too, because I just think when we did that, mindfulness of eating a couple group appointments back, there's so much you notice about eating a strawberry mindfully that you don't notice when you're just sort of eating mindlessly at your desk doing some work. And the same exact thing happens for walking. Walking to a certain extent, there's so many different sort of muscles and movements that are involved that it really is just amazing when you pay attention to that. So it's a really cool experience if you have the 10 to 15 minutes to devote yourself with. I've been going over the physical part of that. You'd also mentioned the mantra part, but I'm going to pause for 1 sec. I saw Amber was about to say something to it.
Oh, I didn't know you could see me.
Oh, yes.
No, have you ever walked in a labyrinth?
I have not, no.
So throughout the United States, there are labyrinths, and a lot of times they'll be located on church properties or at monasteries. There's one in, I don't know the name of it, but it's along 19 North in Ross. And there's a convent, I think, for nuns where they live. And I think it's near La Roche College. And they have one that's public. But the concept of a labyrinth, you could make one in your yard, really. You just don't cut the grass in certain areas.
It's already there.
It's, they don't have to be elaborate or extreme, but it's the difference between a labyrinth and a maze. The maze has a whole bunch of wrong turns that you have to find the right way. And a labyrinth is one path that gets you from point A to point B, but it's a meandering path. And it's usually aesthetically pleasing if you're looking at it from an aerial space. But the thing about it is you take these meandering turns as you focus on the walk. And I know you were about to get into like the mantras, I think, or the prayer meditation, but you're on a safe space so that you're just following this one path. So you don't really have to think about, oh, I have an intersection or I'm passing by this person right now. They're a really interesting experience if you can find one to walk on.
I'm up north, so I'm going to try to find the one that you mentioned up on 19.
Okay, I'll send you a link to it.
That sounds good. Yeah, but, and that's the thing, the safety. This should be some, I would say, physical safety first, of course, but then also like the emotional safety too. If you're walking very slowly and your neighbor's there, and you might not feel emotionally safe to do that. So just a place where you feel okay that you can walk at a good pace and perform the mindful walking. And I even thought of backyards, another place, depending on what your backyard is set up like, you could even just be walking there as well if you're doing more of the pacing, the 10 steps forward, the 7 steps back. The mantra would be another thing to add too, so that we were talking about the physical sensation, paying attention to the feet and the legs. Another part of that I wanted to mention too would be the mind wandering. That's a big thing too. We always talk about when the mind wanders, when we're doing mindfulness of breathing, you note it and then you bring the attention back to your breath. And that's exactly the same thing for when you're doing mindfulness of walking. If you're walking, you start to think about, oh my gosh, I look silly here. What am I doing? Or, oh, I'm walking so slow. I really need to get to this next appointment. When you're thinking about that, you just notice that thought, you pause, you react neutrally to it, and then you bring the awareness back to your feet, to your legs, to your body, to this body in motion. And that can happen, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 times. It's just always the bringing back of that wandering mind and bringing it back firmly to the body, to the legs and the feet. The mantra, the prayer, that could be whatever you would find suitable. I think a mantra, a prayer that would really be suited for walking is nice. The one that I was thinking of, when we were preparing for this was just, with each step, you might be walking, you might be thinking to yourself, you could even be whispering it out loud. With each step, I feel grounded. With each step, I touch peace. So it could be whatever you're looking for in that moment. I think the walking meditation provides a sort of grounding. So that's why I felt like with each step, I feel grounded. And then with each step, I touch peace. It really being a sense of, what I'm looking for from walking meditation would be the hope to feel more peaceful in that moment. And that would just be that. So the focus could be on, with each step, I feel grounded. With each step, I feel peace. With each step, I feel grounded. With each step, I touch peace. And that brings it back to that rhythmic that you were talking about. Walking is a rhythmic motion. It's left, right, left, right. So whatever mantra or prayer you use too would have to have a little bit of rhythmic notion to that as well. Something that you could say again and again. And the grounded and the peace too, I wanted to say that walking meditation can be used responsively too, that could be something that you might be doing on your way to work. It might be something you do in the evening to feel a sense of peace, but it might also be something that you do really when you are upset. Maybe you're stressed. We're getting ready for the start of the fall semester. Maybe there's a lot of calls that need to be made, and really you can just feel the amygdala starting to fire. You're starting to becoming stressed. It can be that 10, 15-minute pause just to really get what you need if you want that grounding and that peace. And the mindfulness and flow too, that was the one thing. The flow is a big element that you were talking about. And to come back to that too, the flow is something where, you're feeling in the zone. It's more of like an expansive state of being. Really, I just like to think about it. You're not caught up in your head. You're not up there thinking. You're kind of in the zone, in the moment. So in that respect, that's something that happens when you're walking. You find yourself fully in your body during this walk, being aware of your feet and your legs, and you just find that that's happening. You're part of this happening that's happening spontaneously. I think the same can happen with the mantra. You're sort of one with the mantra. You're repeating it, but you're just sort of feeling like it's almost like it's being said through you. It's just getting in that zone, in that moment where you're forgetting about, thinking about too much things and just letting it happen. And I noticed too, when you mentioned about the flow, you said it's received. And I love that. You said this is something, being in the zone, the moment of flow, it's received. It's not so much earned. We can't will ourselves in the flow. We can't will ourselves to be, less stressed. It's kind of something that's just received. So it's sort of setting up those circumstances where you can find yourself walking and really being in the zone, feeling grounded and feeling at peace. So that would be something, I'd say if you have the 10, 15 minutes after this session, I'd encourage you to do some walking meditation. It could be tonight, it could be sometime this week, but just to give it a try.
Thank you, TJ. I also think that walking is a great way. Sometimes whenever we get really stressed out and it's swirling all around us, and it's hard to think with clarity if we have these stressors and anxieties surrounding us in the moment, that sometimes taking a step away from that, and as we like to usually say, putting some space around it, can give us clarity when we return to it. And in some situations, people like, oh, I just need to take 10 breaths, but maybe taking, 10 steps is also another good way to do it. So like, whenever we get stressed out, taking that moment to just, if we can, obviously, step away from the situation, take a few steps to be mindful of just the walk and just where you're going, your footfall, and then returning back to the situation. And sometimes that can help to gain more clarity as well.
Yeah, especially in these times where we may be working from home or not going out as much, that work home space collapses. So you can create that space through the walk.
Yeah. So, well, I think I could speak for TJ too here to say thank you for coming. We're so happy to have you all here and coming regularly through the week. I hope that you continue through the academic year. We're going to have more of these classes since we have such a good response with some new and exciting topics to cover. And the quote that I wanted to share today was a Ram Dass quote. I love Ram Dass. And he says this quite often, it's all grist for the mill. And no matter what kind of stress or anxiety you're facing or whatever type of judgmental feelings you might be having when you're trying to be non-judgmental, we can use those things just to work through them to gain more clarity. So whether you believe in karma or just cause and effect, as we come into these things, use it to work through it to gain a little bit more clarity or a little bit more calm. All right, questions and comments.
Thanks, guys. I'm just seeing a lot of thank yous in the chat here. So I think everyone has been enjoying these series. And as Amber mentioned, we're going to be continuing these into the fall. So be sure to watch your inbox for more information to come on those with some more topics on mindfulness. And thank you again for attending today. Links to register for all of our upcoming virtual events will be sent to you in a follow-up email as always. And if you have any questions for TJ or Amber that you didn't ask today, or if there's anything specific you'd like to cover in the fall, their email addresses are on the screen right now, or they will also be included in the follow-up email. And I don't know if Amber or TJ, you had any closing remarks yet?
Well, I know a lot of us are using streaming services now, being isolated and whatnot. So I'd say season 2 of the Mindfulness Meditation for Challenging Times group will be even better than season 1. It'll tie up a lot of loose ends. But seriously, we've been enjoying this presentations and the groups and the great questions and the participations. So it's something where we welcome the chance to be able to present more in the fall.
Great. All right, everyone. Well, thank you again for attending, and we'll see you in the fall. And go Dukes!
Go Dukes!